Wall Street pauses its rally, closing its first losing week in the past 6 after key indices closed with a 1% cut. Asian markets trade mixed while the SGX Nifty signals a muted start for the Indian market. Oil gains is an unprecedented rebellion against Russia triggers fresh supply fears. Brent trades above $74 a barrel. Gold also edges up as a weak dollar prompts safe haven buying. Prime Minister Narendra Modi closes his US visit with key deals. Amazon and Google vow to ramp up investments, committing $25 billion to India post the CEO's meetings with the PM. The PM concludes his visit to Egypt, announcing a strategic partnership with the long-term trade partner. A very good morning and welcome to the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra. You're watching Power Breakfast. It's a fresh new week and a truncated one at that. So we do have a lot of global cues especially to track and a lot of them in our own markets as well. But first up, as we always do, let's take a look at what the Asian markets are doing right now. Now, remember, it was the first week after 6 weeks that we did see a decline in the US markets. That's a weekly decline that I'm talking about. So right now, Asian markets, they are largely mixed. So we do have the Taiwanese index, which is down around 118 points. However, the Hang Seng is seeing gains of around 67 points. The Shanghai too lower in trade. We do have the Nikkei, which is doing well. So it's a very mixed picture for the Asian markets. That is something we'll be tracking. The SGX Nifty is indicating that the start for our own markets, well, that is a little bit in the green, 12 points higher as we speak. So we'll have to see whether it's a flattish opening or we do see some gains, because right now it's absolutely flat on the SGX Nifty. But let's move on and talk about the US markets, because all three major indices closed the week over 1% lower, breaking multi-week winning streaks. On Friday, the Dow Jones gave up nearly 220 points. The S&P closed 0.8% lower. The worst performer was the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite, which ended with a 1% cut. This morning, however, Dow futures are trading in the green, despite Wall Street's first losing week in 6. After that broad-based selling on Wall Street last week, let's also get you some important views coming in on the Fed and the US economy. Listen in.
We could see that economic type of recession, little tough going, muddling along. Now, we would point out, though, we're already in the midst of an earnings recession. That doesn't typically happen. You usually have earnings falling with the economy, but this time it seems like earnings fell first. Doesn't mean there isn't still more downside, but maybe that's actually what the market bottoms back in October were pricing in, was the earnings recession we're going through.
There's no question that the consumer has remained much stronger than many people anticipated over the course of this year, and that will persist into the second half. They've done so through a variety of things. I think, work from home has put some extra cash in people's pockets that they're spending, but they've also gone out on credit cards. And we are seeing personal bankruptcies and delinquencies rising a bit. So that's something to watch.
Okay, all right, that's the global market action. But how will these overnight cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in to tell you just that. The trade setup, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. It's going to be a truncated week. And let's start with the Power Prep segment then. Rima, welcome back. Tell us, what is the trade setup looking like?
Well, the whole weekend we were glued to the actions of what's taking place in Russia, the rebellion there, the mutiny by the Wagner Group. And is that going to result in a risk-off in global markets this morning? But the apparent truce between the two has resulted that, at least as of now, things are calm on the Asian markets. So yes, we had a big sell-off on Wall Street overnight. On Friday, as you pointed out, Nasdaq was down close to about 1%. But this morning, the Asian markets are a mixed picture. Where we are seeing a bit of a reaction is in the energy market. So crude prices, after the slump of last week, Brent crude prices have inched up about 0.5 to 1%. The WTI crude prices, too, is currently up closer to 1%. For our own markets on Friday, we sold off quite considerably. And now we are very close to our 20-day exponential moving average. So traders are saying we need to hold on to this 20-day EMA, day exponential moving average. Broader markets also came under pressure, so they snapped that outperforming streak. And last week, the mid-cap and the small-cap index ended with a cut of nearly 1%. Will the pain continue in the broader markets? That's something the street will watch. On Friday, both the FIs sold for the second consecutive day, selling close to about 344 crore, and the DIIs also sold. It's a sell figure of 684 crore and not a buy figure. We've got the expiry on Thursday, so the focus will be on that. Globally, you've got a Jerome Powell speech coming up later this week, and we've got 3 IPOs which open up for subscription today. Idea Forge, the manufacturer of drone company, Sign DLM, and PKH Ventures, which is a construction company.
Okay, those are a lot of cues. Thank you, Rima, for getting us up to speed with them. Let's talk about some stocks that will be in focus as well. Surbhi joins us with that list. Surbhi.
So I have quite a few stocks on my radar this morning. The first one is SGFC Life. The company receives 940 crores of GST demand notice, and they've deposited 250 crores against this demand under protest. The next one is ICICI Securities. There's a board meeting on June 29th to consider delisting of shares. Godrej Properties, the company acquires 15 acres of land in Haryana. Ipca Labs, US FDA issues Form 483 with 8 observations for company's Pitambur formulations facility. RVNL, the company emerges as the lowest bidder for a project worth 395 crores. And lastly, Zydus Life, the company's wholly owned subsidiary, is going to acquire 6.5% stake in MyLab for 100 odd crores.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for all those cues, Surbhi. Finally, let me go across to Nigel, joining in with all the cues from the FNO space this morning. Hey, Nigel.
Well, morning, Sonal. The last couple of sessions actually have been disappointing for the bulls. The Nifty in the last 2 days, well, we've ended virtually at the low point of the day, which is a bit of a disappointment. The good news, though, is that crude oil prices have corrected, and the monsoon year in India, it's picking up. So that's pretty good news then. Today will be you'll have to watch out whether or not the Nifty confirms that it wants to continue moving to those all-time highs, or maybe pull back a little bit and then move to all-time highs. So in that sense, today is a bit of a test. What do the FIs do in the FNO market? Well, on index futures, they unwound some long positions, and now the long positioning is at around 53%. On the option side, well, they're buying options. They bought options, both the calls as well as puts. On the writing side, they wrote few more calls in comparison to the number of puts. So I'm just going to pull 2 big strikes up. One is the 18,700 call and the 18,700 put. The open interest out there on the on the call side was much higher. The addition was close to around 65 lakh shares odd. The premiums close to around 83 rupees. So you just plug in those numbers and you'll get the broad range for the day. On the downside, close to around 18,620, and on the upside, close to around 18,780. That will be the broad range. So resistance levels comes in at around that 18,783 odd. Support comes in a little bit lower, 18,625. And if we break that, then maybe the Nifty wants to revisit the 50 DMA before trying again to move to those all-time highs. So those are the crucial levels. The SGX Nifty, the last time I checked, was virtually unmoved. So that's indicating a more or less flattish start. Back to you.
Okay, a flat start is what we are expecting. Thank you guys for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. Now getting you some updates on the aviation space and temporary relief for cash-strapped airline Go First. Sources say lenders have given an in-principle approval to revive Go First with an interim funding of around 425 crore rupees. Now the final approval for the funding from the banks will depend on the DGCA's not to restart Go First operations. The banks will seek individual board approvals only after the DGCA's not. Okay, time for a short break now. When we return, we get you highlights from the Prime Minister's visit to the United States and Egypt on the other side. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast here on CNBC TV18. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with Indian and American tech executives on the final day of his visit to the United States, where he agreed on new tech and defense agreements. US President Joe Biden and PM Modi were joined by Apple CEO Tim Cook, Microsoft CEO Sundar Pichai, Google CEO Sundar Pichai, and we also have Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft, Reliance Industries CMD Mukesh Ambani, Mahindra Group Chair Anand Mahindra, to name a few. Addressing the group, President Biden said that the partnership between the United States and India will define what the 21st century will look like. From the United States, PM Modi embarked on his maiden visit to Egypt, which is also the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 26 years. He was received by his Egyptian counterpart at the airport in Cairo. He paid visit to the pyramids of Giza, the Al Hakim Mosque, the Heliopolis War Memorial, and also interacted with members of the Indian diaspora. On Sunday, he held bilateral talks with Egyptian president, and the two sides signed an agreement to elevate relations between New Delhi and Cairo to a strategic partnership. The Egyptian president conferred Egypt's highest state honor, the Order of the Nile, to Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well. Okay, all right. This is all the update that we have from Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US and Egypt. We'll slip into a short break now. Up next, we'll get you all the latest on the current weather situation in the country. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. Well, let's get you some opinion coming in from the pharma majors now. Lupin's Nilesh Gupta said it hurts to hear about incidents involving cough syrups and eye drops, adding that few companies are tarnishing the name of the industry. Other top executives also spoke about quality and expansion. Sun Pharma's Dilip Sangvi believes the industry can grow at a 12 to 15% rate every year.
Pharma industry grows by at least a few percentage more than the GDP growth. We have opportunity to grow this industry by at least 12 to 15% every year in India. Indian companies don't have any significant presence in biologics. And if you see the top 10 products in the world, then increasingly larger number of products are all biologics. How do we start innovating? And how do we start bringing products which are new, which fulfill unmet medical needs of patients and can be sold globally?
When we lay out our organizational priorities, we lay out the numbers, the number one priority always is quality and compliance, getting to a satisfactory state, maintaining that satisfactory state of quality and compliance. You hear about cough syrups and you hear about, eye drops and the like. It actually hurts because that's not the standard of the industry. The industry together is actually at a much better level than that. It's obviously a few players that are then tarnishing the name of the entire industry. Building of that quality and building a culture of quality, that will never be done. And I think that is personal. It's personal to each organization.
Okay, all right. Of course, we'll keep getting you excerpts of that conversation through the course of the day. Moving on, let's talk about the commodity market. Let's talk about the commodity markets. Manisha Gupta is joining us with all the updates there. Hey, Manisha, good morning.
Morning, Sonal. Thank you for that. Well, I'm talking about the crude oil prices, where after nearly 4% decline in the previous week, we have started this week on a positive note. And this is after Russia's brief rebellion by the private military group. Remember, Russia is a major oil supplier to Asia. India itself has been importing record numbers from Russia. So any problem there clearly is enough to add premium to prices. And that's exactly what we are seeing. Though the markets will keep an eye on the further monetary tightening by central banks, and that continues to weigh and keep prices on check as well. And that's exactly what has led to a decline in the gold prices, which fell 2% in the previous week. We did see prices go to a decline of $1,910 per ounce. We're trading at $1,925 right now. That is because the weak PMI data seems to be supporting markets. And apart from that, the street believes that the kind of weak data that we are looking at and recessionary fears, 1,900 to 1,880 is the kind of support that the gold prices will continue to hold on to.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for all those updates, Manisha. Let's get you some important global updates from Russia now, where President Putin is facing the biggest test to his presidency after a former ally began and then called off a march towards Russia's capital at Moscow. NBCC's Keir Simmons has the latest.
In Russia, state television is not showing these stunning images. Russians cheering for the leader of this weekend's aborted rebellion and his soldiers as they leave the city of Rostov-on-Don. Their mutiny bringing the country to the brink of chaos less than 24 hours ago, when Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, led a march to Moscow in response to what he called an attack on his fighters. Tanks and mercenary troops took to the streets, moving within 120 miles of the Russian capital, before an unprecedented deal with President Putin, brokered by another president, Belarus leader Alexander Lukashenko, apparently allowing the man behind the insurrection to go unpunished and into exile. All that's left behind in Rostov-on-Don, occupied by his fighters for less than a day, tank tracks and questions. How can one, in a situation where we are in conflict with another country, have an internal war as well, this man asks. It was unexpected and somehow incomprehensible, says this woman. Very stressful. We're all recovering from the stress. It was the biggest challenge to Vladimir Putin's power in 23 years. The president called Prigozhin's rebellion a betrayal and a stab in the back.
What's so striking about it is it's internal. The fact that you have from within someone directly questioning Putin's authority. The very fact that over the weekend Wagner forces were coming out of Ukraine and going into Russia and toward Moscow in and of itself is extraordinary.
NBC News has learned that US intelligence agencies were aware that Prigozhin was planning a challenge to Russia's senior military leaders, briefing congressional leaders about it last week, according to a source familiar with the matter. Some Russian media saying a senseless massacre was avoided with maturity, while the US and Ukraine sensing weakness at the heart of the Kremlin.
Putin right now is in real trouble. His army, 1.4 million people in the security forces, didn't step in and really squash this rebellion. As we're talking, the Chinese, the Indians, the Brazilians, the Middle East are trying to reassess how likely is Putin to survive much longer.
At the very least, President Putin has more problems than he did, with unknown consequences for his so-called special military operation in Ukraine. The more we hear the Russians have conflicts, this Ukrainian soldier says, the more it raises our fighting spirit.
Okay, that is a developing story. We'll keep getting you more updates on this one. But for now, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. Stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.